Political Forum. I'm Rob Carney from 800-CHAB and DiscoverMooseJaw.com. It's my pleasure to act as your moderator tonight, and I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are on the traditional lands referred to as Treaty 4 territory, and that the city of Moose Jaw is located on Treaty 4 territory, the original lands of the Cree, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect and honor the treaties that were made on all territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we are committed to move forward in partnership with Indigenous nations in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. As you know, we go to the polls in a federal election on Monday, and tonight we are featuring the candidates in the local riding of Moose Jaw, Lake Centre-Lanigan, a riding that stretches a long way from Avonlea through Moose Jaw, Lumsden, Lanigan, Watrous, Outlook, and surrounding regions. Moose Jaw, Lake Centre-Lanigan covers a population of over 76,000 people with more than 56,000 eligible voters. Voter turnout was over 75% in the last federal election in 2019. All 6 candidates have been invited to be with us here tonight, and 5 are here. From the Conservative Party of Canada, Fraser Toney. The Liberal Party, Caitlin Zimmer. The Maverick Party's Craig Townsend. The NDP's Talon Regent, and from the People's Party of Canada, Jay Craig. We are live on the Chamber of Commerce Facebook page and YouTube channel, and live streamed on DiscoverMooseJaw.com as well. As this is a Chamber of Commerce event, the focus tonight is on business, the economy, and our workforce. Each candidate has been given the questions in advance to prepare for tonight's forum. This is not a debate, it is a forum, and the rules have been spelled out by the Moose Jaw District Chamber of Commerce. Each candidate has seen the rules. Each candidate will have a maximum of 5 minutes to introduce themselves. This will be timed, and they will be advised when they have 30 seconds left, if necessary, by the ringing of a bell. Incoming questions will be relayed to the moderator for candidates. Candidates will have a maximum of 2 minutes to answer a question, and that will be timed as well. And if a question is directed to an individual candidate, the other candidates will have 30 seconds to respond to the same question. Candidates will have a maximum of 3 minutes for the final wrap-up, which is scheduled for 8:15 this evening. Please be respectful to all concerned, and remember, due to time constraints, please keep to the scheduled times. We did a random draw moments ago to decide who goes first, second, third, fourth, and fifth with their 5-minute introductions. And number 1 on the list is Jay Craig from the People's Party of Canada. Mr. Craig.
A little bit noisy. Good evening. Hello, everyone. My name is Jay Craig, and I'm honored to be joining you tonight as the People's Party of Canada candidate. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. The Craig Homestead and Family Farm is just a few miles from where I'm sitting here tonight. From our window, we look out the front at Moose Jaw, and at the back, out the back deck at the Cotto Hills, at the fields that were just harvested recently. I grew up here. I'm from here. I've worked here. I've lived my whole life here with my wife and 2 kids. I've worked for nearly 20 years at CP Rail, starting as a conductor, then locomotive engineer, and finally train master. I'm currently a business owner and back in the rail industry as a regulatory compliance manager, providing training to the industrial railway operators across Western Canada. I'm not here because I'm looking for a new career or springboarding from past political experiences. I'm not doing this for a paycheck or a pension. I already have those things. Our family has lived happily here and would potentially continue to do so if I stayed where I was. Yes, yet here I am with you today, recognizing that much of Canada is broken. We cannot afford to stay in the same place, and certainly can't sit idly by as it continues to get worse. We need to stand up. We need to stand together, and I'm willing to lead that charge for our community, and to stand together, united, we will overcome division. Established parties, politicians, and media have banked on this for years. Shortly, each one of us candidates will respond to your questions, sharing our various platforms and ideas. I'm poised to answer, but I don't want the cookie-cutter questions. We've been trained to ask these questions, the kind of questions that create division and are easily sidestepped. Questions that don't reveal truth, that don't help to correct a broken system. So let me ask you, is this the Canada you envisioned growing up in? Is this the Canada you've worked your whole life for? Is this the Canada you want to pass on to your children and future generations? Is this the Canada our forefathers fought and died for? Is this the Canada immigrants left their homes for? Or is it becoming the same thing they left? Is this the Canada described in our national anthem as glorious and free? If you're answering no to any of these questions, then the follow-up has to be, what changed? Or better yet, what has stayed the same? Who really makes the decisions and determines these outcomes? Is it individuals, families, business owners, city councils, school boards, health boards, provincial governments, or federal governments? Is it the central banks or the elites? If you don't know who is responsible, then the system is broken and transparency is lost. I know that in my family, I cannot blame my wife, my kids, or my parents. It's not right to shirk my responsibility. In our country, we are the stakeholders that need to reclaim our authority and representation. Stop believing the lies that our voice doesn't matter, that our vote doesn't matter, and that we don't matter. Change begins when we move from passively believing these lies to standing together in truth. Change in the right direction will become that wave that covers this nation. If we want something different, we need to do something different.
Representing the Liberal Party of Canada, Caitlin Zimmer.
I'm Caitlin Zimmer, and I am here as your Liberal candidate for Moose Jaw Lake Centre-Lanigan. One thing you'll realize about me very quickly on is that I am not a politician, and I have a hard enough time filling up 2 minutes, let alone 5 minutes. So to introduce myself, I'll let you know that I live on an acreage in the RM of Long Laketon, about 3 kilometers north of Craven. I share it with my husband, Joe, a menagerie of animals, and none of which are more wild than the 3- and 5-year-old children. My son, Stan, just started kindergarten in Lumsden. My daughter, Hazel, will start preschool on Thursday. I graduated from the University of Saskatchewan with my Bachelor's of Science degree and my Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. And I spent a few years in rural mixed animal practice before ending up at the small animal clinic that I currently work at. I am actively involved with the Saskatchewan Veterinary Medical Association, and I have been so ever since I graduated. I first sat as the chair of the Professional Wellness Committee, and now I am the vice president on the council. Why would anybody want to do this, run as a Liberal in Saskatchewan? I strongly believe that more female representation and diversity in general is necessary in elected roles. And politics has become a very negative arena to enter into. This made me very concerned for the quality of candidates that were being attracted to represent me. I am intolerant of people who are inactive, apathetic, and I think social media has given them a platform to comment from the safety and security of their homes behind their screens. As a daughter with parents in their mid-70s, I care about seniors. As a sister, my sister Emily lives in Vancouver, and I care about her ability to afford to buy her first home. As a wife, married into a farming family, I care about agriculture and the vitality of small communities. As a working mom, I care about accessible and affordable childcare. And as a small business employee that was impacted by COVID, I care about a safe economic recovery strategy. The issue that dictated my vote in the last election is climate change. And as a resident of planet Earth, I care about protecting the environment. Thank you.
Our next candidate, Talon Regent from the New Democratic Party.
Hello, my name is Talon Regent and I'm your New Democratic candidate. I am an internationally award-winning negotiator, a nationally acclaimed lawyer, and a tech entrepreneur. I am also a New Democrat. And the reason I am part of the New Democratic Party is because I am ready for better than what consecutive Liberal and Conservative governments have been able to deliver. I am ready for better than what Conservative and Liberal governments are prepared to do moving forward. I'm ready for things like universal pharma, dental, mental, and optical care. And that's for one really big reason. It's simply more ethical. Do you want to live in a Canada where we're okay with people dying simply because they can't afford medication? I'm not okay with that, but that is the Canada that we live in right now, and it needs to change. And in addition, the Conservatives will ask, well, Talon, how will you pay for it? But of course, it is literally cheaper. It is cheaper to help people up front with the root cause of their issues rather than constantly dealing with the symptoms later on. And I can give you a prime example. Just earlier today, I was out knocking on doors and I talked to a guy named Jim who went to the dentist and he was told that it was going to cost $800 to get rid of an infection in his tooth. Now, Jim worked a 40-hour work week, but his employer didn't give him benefits and he didn't have $800. So he went home. 3 weeks later, he ended up in the Whitmore Hospital getting emergency oral surgery because that infection spread from his tooth to his gums to his jaw. And that oral surgery cost $20,000. But of course, Jim didn't have to pay for it because now it was covered under our Medicare system. So had we, as a community, banded together and helped Jim up front with $800, it would have saved us $20,000 down the road. And I can give you dozens, if not hundreds, of other examples of how it is cheaper, how it is better for our economy if we help people up front rather than dealing with the symptoms. The other big way that the NDP is going to fund all of the promises that we're providing is by ensuring that ultra-wealthy Canadians pay their fair share towards the pandemic recovery. We are the only party here today that is actually willing to say that we're going to make them pay their fair share. We are going to close the tax loopholes that are allowing billion-dollar companies and billionaires to send all of their money offshore to tax havens. The Liberals, the Conservatives, they have already said, no, we're not going to change any of that. We're okay with that. And what they are actually saying is that they are going to make the middle class and the lower class shoulder the burden of getting out of the pandemic, notwithstanding the fact that billionaires raised to the tune of $78 billion in a single year as a result of the pandemic. We need to do better. I am ready for better, and I am fighting for you. I am fighting for middle-class families. And so I mentioned that we have a lot of promises that we can pay for. And some of those promises include addressing affordability issues. Young people are looking at their futures and they see no hope. They see no ability to afford an education. They see no ability to afford a home. And they see no ability to get better than a living wage with which they might afford these things. We need to do better for the members of our society. We need to do better for families, and that is what New Democrats will do for you. Thank you.
Representing the Conservative Party of Canada, Fraser Tolney.
Thank you for joining us tonight, and I'd like to thank the Chamber, the other candidates that are here, and Mr. Carney for hosting tonight. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Fraser Tolney, and I am the Conservative candidate for the Moose Jaw Lake Centre-Lanigan riding. I want to share our party's plan to secure Canada's future. But first, I want to start by telling you a little bit about myself. I served with the Royal Canadian Air Force as an officer, which brought me here to Moose Jaw in 2006. Moose Jaw is where I met Cassandra, and where we have chosen to stay to raise our two beautiful daughters. I served as a city councillor for Moose Jaw, and I served as mayor from 2016 until just recently. I resigned as mayor so I could direct my full attention to this important campaign and election. This election is indeed important. This election, Canadians have the opportunity to choose between Canada's Conservatives or more of the same from the Liberals and the NDP. Canada cannot afford another 4 more years of Justin Trudeau with his constant ethical scandals and uncontrolled spending. The West has felt ignored, left out, and left behind by a federal government that simply isn't responding to the unique needs of our region. Policy should be there to help us, not to hinder us. We need a partner in Ottawa that will support our natural resource and agriculture-based economy. Only a change in government can offer the change our riding needs. It is time to put an end to the constant division of Justin Trudeau and restore our confidence in the promise of confederation. Only Canada's Conservatives have a viable plan to do just that. Canada is a nation of innovators, inventors, entrepreneurs, and hard workers. Our prosperity comes from the hard work of our people, not our federal government. But when the federal government gives provinces the tools they need to unleash their economic potential, anything is possible. The Conservative Party has a plan to get Canadians back to work, to put an end to corruption in Ottawa, to balance the budget over 10 years, to boost federal funding for mental and addictions treatment, and so much more. We have a plan to bring real federal investment and infrastructure to Saskatchewan, like the Lake Diefenbaker irrigation project, which will help bring water security to countless farmers in this riding and unleash our economic potential. Only the Conservative Party can defeat Justin Trudeau and get Canada moving in the right direction, so we can chart a course for a future of prosperity, opportunity, and hope. Only the Conservative Party has a plan to restore Canadians' faith in not only their government, but their country. I am driven by service, committed to accountability, and I'm ready to serve you. Thank you.
Representing the Maverick Party, Craig Townsend.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. My thanks to the Chamber, our moderator Rob, and the other candidates. My name is Craig Townsend, and I'm the candidate for the Maverick Party. My background is military and engineering. I have a bachelor's degree in materials engineering, and I'm a commissioned officer in the Canadian Army. The Army instilled a strong work ethic and the discipline to complete my studies. Engineering is the application of scientific principles to solve real-world, non-standard problems. And I started my own business in 1997. One of the key points I've learned in the last 25 years in the industry is that if real-world observations do not match your expectations or theory, the real world is never wrong. I have 4 kids who are finishing up high school and starting college, who are my reason for taking up this challenge. After almost 20 years in the oil industry, my career was ended by policies from Ottawa, and I was left with the difficult choice of leaving Canada and my kids to work overseas, as every country's oil industry was booming except Canada and Venezuela at the time, or staying and starting over. I chose to stay. It was heartwarming to meet so many patriotic citizens these last few weeks. First, I want to let you know that you're not alone with your frustration with Ottawa, with the direction that Ottawa is taking us. I've been to almost every town in the riding, and the sentiment is overwhelming. Like you, other Canadians have been stuck idle on the sidelines while our country slips away from us. When did it become an egregious sin to believe that every life matters, or that our police officers are there to help us? Economically, the current administration has created structural debt that is unsustainable. Structural debt is the amount that Ottawa must pay to maintain new departments and wages for newly created government jobs. Every department in the federal government has seen a large increase in their budget except the Auditor General, the department that provides us oversight of where our tax dollars are going. No level of government in Canada provides a product or service to the market to generate wealth for taxpayers. All levels of government make their money one way. They take it from us as taxes. The latest estimate of balancing the books is 27. 50 years to balance the books, during which time we continue to accrue debt. Like all debt, this debt has to be serviced. The latest estimates of the amount of taxpayer money going to service this debt is $40 billion a year, and climbing. In 2015, Ottawa declared war on Western Canada's energy sector, shut down pipelines, and imposed a tanker ban on the West. The move might have gotten 6 seats in strategic Toronto and Montreal ridings for the cost of the livelihoods of about 300,000 oil industry workers across Canada, mostly in the West. Along with Western oilfield workers, the Liberals are putting gun shop owners out of business. It was in May 2020 when the Liberals declared random, law-abiding citizens as criminals for legally purchasing firearms. At that same time, then Finance Minister Morneau was attempting to push a criminal code change through a finance bill to make their friends at SNC-Lavalin less criminal. As Western Canadians, we are used to putting up with Ottawa's self-interested policies for the West. Every generation, we send Western Regional Party down east and ask them to treat us like full citizens in our own country. And every time we get beat by the Ottawa machine. Ottawa will not allow the West's future to be decided by Westerners. As citizens of Canada, you have the right to be represented in Ottawa as full citizens. Your views should not be dismissed by a party leader in Ottawa because you don't live in a demographically significant riding. The Maverick Party will only run candidates in Western Canada. As such, I can represent the views of my constituents and not bow to the will of Ottawa. It is the only party dedicated to halting Ottawa's overreach into Western provincial responsibilities, destroying the economy and the fabric of our society. We support scrapping the carbon tax and equalization, building resources for Western markets instead of curtailing production, and fiscal responsibility. We also will push for a Triple E Senate, equally elected and effective. The role of Senate was originally as a sober second voice to Parliament. Canada was formed in 1867. The first talk of Senate reform was 1874. The Canadian government did not even make two terms before people started calling foul on the Senate. The Maverick Party agrees with those calling foul on the Senate, and with our twin-track approach, we will not have to remain idle on the sidelines as our country slips away. Thank you.
Thank you to all our candidates for the opening statements. Question number 1, and again, all candidates received the questions in advance from the Moose Jaw District Chamber of Commerce. Question number 1 will be answered in this order. Caitlin Zimmer, followed by Talon Regent, Fraser Tony, Craig Townsend, and then Jay Craig. Moose Jaw has a unique opportunity to capitalize on the new economy created by the pandemic. By attracting professionals to our community with affordable housing and taxes compared to large cities, as well as a friendly atmosphere, Moose Jaw could become a new tech hub in Canada. These professionals could work from their homes for businesses around the world and still enjoy the quality of life that Moose Jaw provides. The question, what is your party's plan to attract and grow more investment in these sectors? Caitlin Zimmer.
I wish you wouldn't say that so loudly, because I view the small communities and cities of Saskatchewan as our little known secret, and I don't want the word to get out. But one of the things that the Liberal Party would do, and that is personal to me, is make housing affordable. So I have a sister, as I mentioned, who's living in Vancouver, and she is, without disclosing her age, in her mid-30s and struggling to afford to buy her first home. In fact, she's even looked at properties in Saskatchewan as an option. And so what the Liberal Party is putting forward in their platform is a rent-to-own program. They are proposing the building of new homes. They are putting forward a tax-free first-time home buyers tax savings account so that people can save up to $40,000 tax-free to be put as a down payment on their home. And they are also protecting purchasers by ending blind bidding and allowing the legal right to a home inspection. Other issues in the Liberals platform that would help boost the economy is their child care, their $10 a day child care proposal, and I will speak more about that shortly.
Mr. Regent.
As a tech entrepreneur myself, I have developed virtual reality trial software for lawyers. I've worked in automation software. And so as a tech entrepreneur myself, I am well equipped to explain just how valuable making Moose Jaw a tech hub would be. And I can also say from personal experience, the reason I moved to Moose Jaw as a tech entrepreneur was because it was affordable, because it was safe, because it had all the services that I wanted out of my community without a crazy long commute. And that is what the NDP is proposing from coast to coast to coast. Life is getting incredibly unaffordable in places like Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, and so we need to make sure that life is affordable. And with affordability, we're talking implementing universal pharma, dental, mental, and optical care. We're talking about building homes that people can actually buy, rather than looking at $500,000 projects that nobody's ever going to afford. When we're talking about services, we're talking about making sure that small businesses can succeed, so that a person moving to Moose Jaw knows that they're going to be able to get the amenities that they want. And that's not going to happen when conservatives and liberals are cherry picking which businesses succeed and which ones fail. When they are subsidizing the largest businesses like Loblaws, when they're subsidizing the oil and gas sector, it means that we have less money for mom and pop shops. It means we have less money for services that people need, that people desire. And so we need to make sure that we support small business. We need to make sure that our community is affordable, and that's what New Democrats will do for our community.
Fraser Tony.
Thank you. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought mostly challenges and hardship for people in nearly all sectors of our economy. But as the question suggests, there are few opportunities arising to attract workers to smaller communities like Moose Jaw. As Mayor of Moose Jaw, I worked hard alongside with City Council and business leaders to promote and rebrand our great city. Moose Jaw has so much to offer, and I do believe that our best days are ahead of us. Attracting investment is about building confidence and restoring confidence, and the confidence we build between the Mayor's office, City Council, and business community is yielding results. It's so great to see new buildings being erected, new investment coming to our city, and growth like we haven't seen in many years. The credit for that growth and economic development goes to the people of Moose Jaw. It was part of eliminating red tape and bureaucracy that helped create a culture of accountability and progress. The same is true for the federal government, though on a different scale. We need to build confidence in Canada, not only at home, but abroad. And only a conservative government can do that. We also need a Prime Minister who will partner with smaller communities like Moose Jaw to better assess their needs and explore regional economic development. We don't need another Ottawa knows best Prime Minister. To create meaningful economic growth in communities like Moose Jaw, Canada needs a conservative government that will listen to our needs and partner with us to move forward.
Craig Townsend, Adler Party, your party's plan to attract and grow more investment in the tech sector.
Well, first, let's hope these unique opportunities are extremely rare. I worked in the oil field up until 2015 when it was systematically sabotaged by Ottawa's policies. Had I still lived in Edmonton with its high costs, regulations, and taxes, I would have been forced to relocate overseas and away from my kids and family. By relocating to Blackworth with its low costs, regulations and taxes, I was given a choice. I could start over. The Maverick Party believes in scrapping the carbon tax, scrapping equalization. We would repeal bills C-48 and C-69, the tanker ban and the Pipelines Act. And we believe in fiscal responsibility and autonomy. Thank you.
And Jay Craig, People's Party of Canada, your party's plan to attract and grow more investment in the tech industries.
The PPC plan is to get the economy back on track. Canada has derailed as a whole. It's not the government's job to pick the winners and losers by earmarking financial incentives for a tech company. The new opportunities that have arisen throughout the pandemic is the entrepreneur's solution to a newly restricted season. This is a perfect example of the free market at play. The ability to meet the needs as they arise without intervention or interference from the government. The vision for Canada's future is not that we would be under lockdown. Certainly there are professionals that support remote working, but there needs to be more equal opportunity for the businesses that have a storefront and require staffing. Our plan isn't to promise more. We're already at a huge deficit. We need to restore fiscal responsibility to the Canadian economy. Once that is achieved, we will look at reducing the tax burden on Canadians rather than throwing money at one industry over another. Thank you.
And that completes our answers for question number 1. Question number 2 will start. Responses will start with Talent Regent, followed by Fraser Tony, Craig Townsend, Jay Craig, and Caitlin Zimmer. Question number 2. Will your party look at reforming the employment insurance system to discourage repeat usage of the EI system and to encourage greater workforce mobility? If so, what measures will your party take to achieve this? Mr. Regent.
I reject a large part of that question because it presumes that people are abusing the EI system. Employment insurance is something that every worker pays into when they are working. And so if they're down on their luck or if their employer fires them without cause, absolutely, they should be allowed to receive the employment insurance that they were paying into. And we need to make sure that people have the opportunities to succeed. We need to make sure that after somebody loses their job for one reason or another, they have the ability to find a new one. And in ensuring that people have the ability to find a new one, we need to give them the security that they can put food on their table, that they can pay their rent or their mortgage, that they can buy their medications. And if somebody can't do that when they're transitioning from one job to another, then their life will fall apart. They will fall through the cracks, and it will be a struggle. It will cost our economy more. So again, we need to invest wisely as our government. Throwing money at a problem is not the solution. We need to look at what the wise investment is. And the wise investment is investing in people, which is what New Democrats will do. While people are falling through the cracks under Conservative and Liberal governments, New Democrats will help them up and ensure that they have the opportunity to succeed. When we're talking about employment insurance, we also have to talk about CERB. I know that a lot of Canadians, a lot of our community made use of CERB. And I want to remind Canadians that the NDP was the one that pushed the Liberals to ensure that Canadians were looked after. We didn't want billions of dollars given to the banks. We wanted people looked after. That's what New Democrats can deliver for you.
Fraser Tony, Conservative Party.
Thank you. When COVID-19 first struck, our economy was largely shut down. It was appropriate that the federal government stepped in to provide support to Canadians that had lost their jobs for most of their hours. That's why the Conservative Party worked with all parties in the House of Commons to provide that urgently needed support. However, the way that it was executed created so many predictable problems that many Canadians are dealing with today. Many Canadians who believed they were eligible for CERB ended up finding out that in fact they were not. And only after receiving and spending money, now there are Canadians that have a tax bill to worry about, because the Liberal government decided that CERB would not be tax deductible, and that for many of these people, they still do not have meaningful jobs or opportunities. That's why we need to repair our social safety net and close some of the gaps while unleashing the potential of free enterprise to create good paying job opportunities so that fewer Canadians require employment insurance in the first place. The Conservative Party will always support Canadians in times of crisis, but we want to prioritize job creation over this and create jobs for the future of Canadians in the future. Thank you.
Again, the question for people who may be just joining us. Will your party look at reforming the employment insurance system to discourage repeat usage of the EI system and to encourage greater workforce mobility? If so, what measures will your party take to achieve this? Mr. Townsend.
Absolutely. Borrowing to pay your workforce to not work is a sure recipe for inflation. Payroll taxes are a huge burden for small and medium-sized businesses, and Ottawa has found it easier to take wealth from demographically insignificant ridings rather than refrain from spending taxpayer money. Thank you.
And Mr. Craig.
EI on its own is not, as it's intended, is an insurance plan to protect workers. We are not looking to reform EI. CERB was created as an emergency response, but has become a form of universal basic income. Canada cannot afford to continue to pay people to stay at home. In our own riding, the streets are lined with businesses crying out for workers. We need to allow Canadians to get back to work. People need to feel a sense of accomplishment that comes from a job well done. Canada needs to learn to live with COVID and allow the people to get back to work, thereby eliminating the need for CERB.
Thank you, sir. And again, the question for those who may just be joining us. Will your party look at reforming the employment insurance system to discourage repeat usage of the EI system and to encourage greater workforce mobility? If so, what measures will your party take to achieve this? Caitlin Zimmer, the Liberal Party of Canada.
I'll answer this question based on my own experience with having to apply for EI at the beginning of COVID. I woke up one morning with a sore throat. I called my employer, who told me that I had to phone public health, called public health, and they said that I was not eligible for a COVID test. I had to self-isolate for 14 days. I had to apply for EI, and within 24 hours of applying for EI, the Liberal government had already transitioned my application into the emergency relief benefit. And I think that they did an extraordinary job rolling out a program as quickly as possible to protect as many people as possible. And it's unfortunate that a small percentage of people took advantage of that opportunity. But I think that it was for the greater good because it benefited people like me and others who needed it. I'd also like to point out that the money was not assumed, at least by myself, to be tax-free. I viewed it as a paycheck. And that the Liberal government has already helped to recover 92% of jobs that were lost during the pandemic and have a plan to create 1 million more jobs moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to question number 3 for our candidates in Moose Jaw Lake Centre-Lanigan at the Moose Jaw District Chamber of Commerce Political Forum tonight. It's a 3-part question. Question number 3. A skilled workforce is essential to a productive and competitive economy. What is your party's strategy to increase the skill level of the Canadian workforce? In your opinion, what role should businesses play in increasing the skill level of the workforce? And what role can the federal government play in assisting business in providing workplace training, especially for small and medium-sized enterprises? Question number 3, responses start with Conservative Party of Canada candidate Fraser Tolney.
Thank you for that question. Businesses know what skills their employees need better than any bureaucrat or politician. That's why any conversation about skills training needs to start by consulting with the private sector to find out exactly what their needs are. Though many Canadians are having a hard time finding employment, I talk to businesses all the time that tell me their number one problem facing their business is a shortage in staff. I've talked to restaurant owners, feedlot operators, and implement dealers that simply don't have the staff they need to meet their potential. We need to give Canadians access to skills training, but we also need to be in better communication with the private sector about their needs and what skills certifications are lacking in the job market. We need to encourage young people to look hard at a career in skilled trade, attract professionals from other jurisdictions to come to Canada for work, and that starts with building confidence, as I mentioned earlier on. Only a Conservative government can get us back on track.
Representing the Maverick Party, Mr. Craig Townsend.
Industry is the authority on what skills industry needs, and education is a provincial responsibility. The federal government should be ready to assist and should be aware of trends in industry, but not steer it. The basics should be taught in school with specifics tailored to each company. But due to the variability of each company and their needs on a changing basis, the federal government has more chance of hindering than helping. The federal government should assist provincial authority when asked. Thank you.
Again, the question, for those who may be just joining us on Facebook, YouTube, or on discovermoosjob.com. A skilled workforce is essential to a productive and competitive economy. What's your party's strategy to increase the skill level of the Canadian workforce? Also, in your opinion, what role should businesses play in increasing the skill level of the workforce? And part 3 of question 3, what role can the federal government play in assisting business in providing workplace training, especially for small and medium-sized businesses? Next up, Jay Craig.
Again, I need to reiterate that the PPC is not making promises for more spending. What we are looking to do is, over the course of one mandate, is reduce corporate income tax from 15% down to 10%. Business then has the flexibility to use those tax savings in areas that apply specifically to them. That may be offering employees yearly professional development allowances to increase their skill level. In order for businesses to remain competitive as employers and product services providers, it will be in their best interest to ensure they have skilled workers, which means compensating them accordingly. To remain competitive locally and on the world stage, they need to understand that their employees are their best resource. Investment in the human resources is an investment in their business.
And from the Liberal Party, Caitlin Zimmer.
Just a simple 3-part question that I would struggle to repeat. But I'll use an example with my own profession on how this problem could be approached. Number 1, you could start to attract interest in a given profession or sector early on, targeting high school students and university students early in their career. We need to increase opportunities for training in universities, colleges, and trade schools, expanding the number of seats so that we can train more students. We also, as small business owners, have to give opportunities to these students to learn on the job. And one of the things that the Saskatchewan Veterinary Medicine Association is doing is providing mentorship and preceptorship job placements for the summertime that are partially subsidized in order to get students experience and even get their foot in the door at a potential employer's practice at the end of their schooling. And finally, the federal government could play a role in student loan forgiveness, as well as low or no interest loans on individuals looking to start their own business?
Again, the three-part question, a skilled workforce is essential to a productive and competitive economy. What's your party's strategy to increase the skill level of the Canadian workforce? Also, in your opinion, what role should business play in increasing the skill level of the workforce? And part three of question three, what role can the federal government play in assisting business in providing workplace training, especially for small and medium-sized enterprises? NDP candidate Talon Regent.
Education, education, education. Education is the single best investment that a government can put money towards out of any conceivable place to put funds. And I recognize that some of the people at this table don't understand that it's important that we make investments in our future. Every dollar that we put into education nets a $7 return on investment. That is huge, and that should be one of the greatest focuses of any government. But right now, education is becoming less and less affordable. Even at the elementary and high school levels, teachers are strapped. Teachers are having to invest their own money out of their own pocket for resources in classrooms. And that is unacceptable. We need to be investing in our education. From the federal level, yes, education can be a provincial jurisdiction, but the federal government absolutely provides funding now, and it will provide funding into the future, especially a new Democratic government. A new Democratic government recognizes that we need to invest in Canadians, and education is one of the best ways to do that. As an employer myself, as a business owner myself, I would love to be able to go out into the job market and find people fully trained. I don't want to have to be my own training manager at my small business. I think I've still got some time there. I don't want to have to be training every one of my members of my staff when I only have 3 people there. I don't have the resources there. Investing in Polytech, investing in university, that is what will ensure that I have skilled workers to be able to find in the job market. And the NDP will make sure that education is affordable for people so that they can get that education. Thank you.
Question number 4 for our candidates is a 2-part question, and responses will start with Mr. Townsend from the Maverick Party. In recent years, a divide has emerged between Western Canada and Parliament Hill in Ottawa, much of it related to climate change policy and its effects on the energy and agriculture sectors. 2-part question. Do you believe climate change is a threat to our economy? And how does your party plan to strike a balance between addressing climate change while not disproportionately causing hardship on the ag and energy sectors in Saskatchewan? Mr. Townsend.
First part, no, Ottawa's climate policies are a threat to Canada's economy. The best way to address climate change is with technology and mitigation. Every time we impose damaging regulations that destroy our industries, all we do is send the production to jurisdictions with little or no environmental standards. Destroying Evraz, then importing steel from China, doesn't lower global emissions. It just changes the jurisdiction that those emissions occur in. This gives Canadian politicians the empty talking point that somehow we lowered emissions in Canada. However, everyone knows the climate is global, so all we've accomplished is punishing Canadian workers and industries for a political shell game. The Maverick Party will allow the provinces to make their own climate policies. BC had a carbon tax long before Ottawa imposed theirs. Thank you.
Jay Craig, People's Party of Canada.
Absolutely. I believe the government response of alarmism and hysteria to the topic of climate change is a huge threat to our economy. The disproportionate hardship is already being imposed on the agricultural community and individuals all across Canada. We are the only party looking to end this climate tax craziness. How much money stolen through taxation from the hardworking Canadians does it take to alter the atmosphere? I believe that we should focus on tangible things such as stopping billions of liters of raw sewage being dumped into Canadian waterways. Canada's impact on the world stage is insignificant. If we completely stopped all CO2 emissions and thereby crushed Canada's economy, the amount of potential change would be within the margin of error globally. We plan to remove Canada from the Paris Climate Accord. We plan to stop foreign aid to help other countries reduce their emissions. By going green, we actually redistribute our emissions to other countries at a much higher rate than we currently admit. Thank you.
Again, the two-part question, question number 4. In recent years, a divide has emerged between Western Canada and Parliament Hill and Ottawa, much of it related to climate change policy and its effects on the energy and agriculture sectors. The two-part question, do you believe climate change is a threat to our economy? And how does your party plan to strike a balance between addressing climate change while not causing hardship on the ag and energy sectors in Saskatchewan? From the Liberal Party of Canada, Caitlin Zimmer.
I absolutely believe that climate change poses a threat to our economy, and I think that my parents who live in British Columbia and are dealing with wildfires, and my in-laws that farm in West Central Saskatchewan and have dealt with a terrible drought and crop failure this year would agree. My party's plan to address this divide is to elect a Liberal MP who lives in Saskatchewan. This riding has been represented by the Conservatives since its inception. And where has that gotten us? It's gotten us more and more polarized. What they need is somebody who is from the governing party to have a seat at the table to advocate for the residents of Saskatchewan.
NDP candidate, Tyler Regent.
We are living in a climate emergency. This is a climate crisis that we need to overcome. And right now, we have a choice between the Conservatives, who aren't even ready to recognize that climate change exists, or we've also got an option with the Liberals, where Justin Trudeau talks a big game, but then he goes and exempts the biggest polluters. The day after he declared a climate emergency, he bought a pipeline for $4 billion. We need a party that is going to take climate change seriously, and that is the New Democratic Party. And the New Democratic Party, again, it just seems to be so much more intelligent when it comes to how we invest our funds. Insurance companies, actuaries have explained over and over and over again to government officials from the Conservatives and the Liberals that if we don't invest now in handling the climate crisis, things are just going to get worse. We are going to spend billions of dollars more fighting extreme weather events like forest fires in BC. We're going to have more droughts in Saskatchewan that is going to hurt our agriculture sector. We're going to end up with more heat waves in Quebec that kill our vulnerable seniors. If we don't invest now, that is all just going to get worse, and it is going to be more expensive to combat them down the road. So we need to invest today to handle the climate crisis, which will ensure that we actually have the ability to maintain our sectors in the future. And just quickly on energy, I want to point out that we have some of the best opportunities for wind, solar, geothermal, and hydro in Canada. That is the energy sector that I believe we need to invest in.
And one more time, for those who may be just joining us online, the two-part question to question number 4, do you believe climate change is a threat to our economy? And how does your party plan to strike a balance between addressing climate change while not causing hardship on the ag and energy sectors in Saskatchewan? Conservative Party of Canada candidate Fraser Tolney.
Thank you. According to the University of Regina, a research paper that was done, Saskatchewan had droughts in 1910, 1914, 1917 to 1921, 1924, 1929, 1931 to 1939, 1958 to 1963, 1967 to 1969, 1974, 1977, 1979 to 1981, 1983 to 1986, 1988 to 1992, 2001 to 2003, and 2009. Droughts are nothing new, but the way we respond to them should continue to evolve. That's why the Conservative government would invest in the Lake Diefenbaker irrigation project to give farmers water security for generations to come. Climate change may make drought seasons more frequent in the future, which makes this project even more important to safeguard the crops and livelihoods of our farmers well into the future. Justin Trudeau has abandoned the province of Saskatchewan. He has also missed every single climate target he has set. His carbon tax simply isn't working, and quite frankly, only by working with the provinces and the private sector to come up with localized solutions to bring emissions down will we actually make an impact. This brings me to the second half of my response, which is where we actually implement solutions. Premier Scott Moe and the Saskatchewan Party came up with a plan that will reduce our emissions while ensuring that we aren't footing farmers with the bill. Justin Trudeau rejected that proposal, but Aaron O'Toole has committed to accept it so that we can have a made in Saskatchewan environment plan that actually works for farmers.
Thank you, Mr. Tony. And we'll go back to our original order, starting with Mr. Craig for question number 5. Since 95% of Canadian businesses employ fewer than 50 people, what policies would your party implement to ensure the continued vitality of Canada's small and medium-sized enterprises? From the People's Party of Canada, Jay Craig.
We would immediately stop all corporate welfare, sending billions of dollars to GM, Bombardier, Loblaws, Air Canada, and CBC through government intervention has crushed our small and medium businesses. I'm a business owner, and if I mismanage my business and it fails, the government is not bailing me out. We would push through the building of Canadian pipelines under Section 9210 of the Canadian Constitution. In the interest of national infrastructure projects, this can be done through BC and Quebec for the good of all Canadians. By getting out of UN, the World Health Organization, and other non-governmental organizations, we will restore Canadian sovereignty and put the power back into the hands of Canadians.
Again, question number 5. Since 95% of Canadian businesses employ fewer than 50 people, what policies would your party implement to ensure the continued vitality of Canada's small and medium-sized enterprises? Caitlin Zimmer, Liberal Party of Canada candidate.
So one of the things that will be important is getting people to work. And that includes women who have the potential to make up to 50% of the workforce. The Liberal Party is proposing a $10 a day childcare program, and it's going to expand the number of facilities with spots. And this will benefit people like me who are struggling in smaller communities to find a placement for their kid in order to return to the workforce. The second thing that is going to be necessary for these small businesses is to keep people at work once they're back. And so their healthcare initiatives to increase the doctors and nurses by 7,500 positions, as well as treating mental health as health, are two initiatives of the Liberal government that will benefit small businesses directly.
Again, question number 5. Since 95% of Canadian businesses employ fewer than 50 people, what policies would your party implement to ensure the continued vitality of Canada's small and medium-sized enterprises? From the NDP candidate, Talon Regent.
Who has the backs of small and medium-sized businesses? When we ask that question, we can point to evidence during the COVID pandemic that you know New Democrats are in it for you. You know that New Democrats are in it for small and medium-sized businesses. Justin Trudeau and Aaron O'Toole, they were suggesting that businesses get a 10 to 15% wage subsidy for their workers during the pandemic. And the NDP said, hold up a second. You want to give a 10 or 15% wage subsidy, but you want to give tens of billions of dollars to the banks. You want to provide major bailouts to the likes of Loblaws. We need to help small businesses. And it was the New Democratic Party that ensured that we had a wage subsidy of 75%, which helped to save so many small businesses in Moose Jaw, in our riding, and from coast to coast to coast. So you know that when push comes to shove, it doesn't really matter what the Conservatives and Liberals say, because they won't do what it takes to protect small businesses. The NDP, we fought for you and we made sure to get it done. And moving forward, one of the other major things that we need to do is ensure that ultra-wealthy corporations are paying their fair share of the taxes. If all of these billion-dollar companies are sending their money offshore to tax havens, that means that every other business has to pay more tax. They have to shoulder the burden, as do regular working families. Everyday Canadians have to pick up that slack when billionaires are allowed to offshore their funds. So we need to ensure that they are paying their fair share, which will ensure that small and medium-sized businesses have an equal opportunity to succeed.
The question on the table again, since 95% of Canadian businesses employ fewer than 50 people, what policies would your party implement to ensure the continued vitality of Canada's small and medium-sized enterprises? Representing the Conservative Party of Canada, candidate Fraser Tone.
Thank you. This question is about what we will do, not about what we won't do. Small businesses don't only provide jobs and services in their community, but they also enhance and enrich the culture of that community. That's why the Conservative Party will introduce the Canada Job Surge Plan to get Canadians back to work and support small businesses to make new hires. A Conservative government will pay at least 25% of the salary of new hires for 6 months after the CEWS expires, helping to support small businesses and help them expand. The Conservative Party has always been the party of free enterprise and has always supported small business. This election is no different. We will always fight for fairness and opportunity for small businesses.
And Craig Townsend, Maverick Party, to answer the fifth and final question submitted by the Moose Jaw District Chamber of Commerce. Since 95% of Canadian businesses employ fewer than 50 people, what policies would your party implement to ensure the continued vitality of Canada's small and medium-sized enterprises? Mr. Townsend.
As a small business owner, I know that regulations disproportionately hinder small business and medium businesses who often cannot afford to absorb the costs of new regulations or simply pick up and move to a more appealing jurisdiction. The Maverick Party advocates for less government overreach and less regulation. We would like to see the federal government just get out of the way of industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. That completes our responses to the submitted questions by the Moose Jaw District Chamber of Commerce. And we are now going to go to some of the submitted questions from our dozens of viewers who are watching right now on YouTube, on Facebook, and on discovermoosejaw.com. Let's go back to the same order and start with Mr. Craig and go from left to right. Here's the submitted question online. What might the candidates or parties do to make sure there is more transparency between citizens and government? How will we be protected from censorship, government overreach, and discrimination? People's Party of Canada candidate Jay Craig.
That's one of the biggest things that's going on in Canada today is the censorship and government overreach. We need to cut the size of our government. Smaller government's just not an idea. Smaller government's a requirement in Canada. The Liberal Party of Canada has generated jobs through claims of their own. Those jobs have been developed mostly in government. We need to get Canada back on track. We need to push pipelines through Canada. We need to eliminate the carbon tax. We need to eliminate foreign spending, get out of these non-governmental organizations, and get us back on track. Transparency means talking to the residents of the riding and being accountable to them. I will be your guy. I will be your MP in Ottawa that stands and fights for Moose Jaw, Lake Centre-Lanigan.
Again, the question submitted by one of our viewers tonight: what might the candidates or parties do to make sure there is more transparency between citizens and government? How will we be protected from censorship, government overreach, and discrimination? Liberal Party of Canada candidate Caitlin Zimmer.
Did you plant that question, Shay? That was a good answer. So I guess I would use the Liberal Party's platform as an example of their transparency. So they released a very comprehensive, ambitious, yet costed platform that clearly lays out where the money is going to come from and where it's going to go to. And this is a first of its kind. In addition, they built in a buffer into the platform because times are so uncertain that they thought that that was the wisest choice, given the fact that we don't know what the next couple years will look like. The Liberal Party platform is also very inclusive, and it really does have something in it for everybody. And so I think this is a way that it could reach and be as comprehensive and inclusive as possible.
The question: what might the candidates or parties do to make sure there is more transparency between citizens and government? How will we be protected from censorship, government overreach, and discrimination? NDP candidate Talon Regent.
In protecting our nation from discrimination, we need to ensure to stamp out hate speech. And that is not something that we need to be worried about as a matter of government overreach. We have seen in Canada very recently families mowed down by people in vans who have been radicalized as a result of hate speech. We need to ensure that hate speech is stamped out and that it is treated as a crime, as it currently is. We need to make sure to talk to our friends and families to ensure that discrimination does not spread and that it is reduced. We need to send a message of love and of hope rather than one of hate and fear. A new Democratic government under Jagmeet Singh is spreading that message. We are spreading the message not to discriminate, but to embrace one another as a true community. I also want to mention that we're going to protect the arts. So when it comes to ensuring that we have artistic expression in Canada, we need to make sure that Netflix, that YouTube, and that other major players on the international stage are promoting our cultural expression with film tax credits, with arts tax credits, with different types of things that are going to promote our culture and our arts. And some have mischaracterized that as censorship, but it is not censorship. It is the farthest thing from it. It is ensuring that our culture doesn't get swallowed up by the American culture or by any other culture. We need to invest in our arts, and a new Democratic government will do that for you.
Again, the question: what might the candidates or parties do to make sure there is more transparency between citizens and government? How will we be protected from censorship, government overreach, and discrimination? Conservative Party of Canada candidate Fraser Tolney.
Well, I'd like to talk about the accountability of government, and the Trudeau Liberals don't believe that the rules apply to them. At the height of the pandemic, they gave nearly $1 billion to charity that had paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to Prime Minister Trudeau's family members. They accepted illegal gifts from organizations that lobby their government. They interfered with the judicial process to help their well-connected friends. Canada's Conservatives will pass an Anti-Corruption Act to ensure that monetary penalties for any violation of the Conflict of Interest Act. Justin Trudeau and Bill Morneau were both found to have behaved unethically, but face no penalties for their conflict of interest. There will be an increase in fines for ethical violations from a maximum of $500 to a maximum of $50,000 to deter unethical behavior. The Conservative Party introduced that bill a number of years ago, but it didn't go far enough, and so we will increase those fines to $50,000.
Again, the question: what might the candidates or parties do to make sure there is more transparency between citizens and government? How will we be protected from censorship, government overreach, and discrimination? From the Maverick Party, Craig Townsend.
Every large organization that gives large sums of money to the media can expect favorable treatment from the media. The Maverick Party believes in defunding these initiatives, these policies. Additionally, the Maverick Party supports amended rules that would see substantially increased fines or potential expulsion from the House of Commons for ethics violations and conflict of interest violations by members of Parliament and senators. Thank you.
The next submitted question from one of our viewers, and again we'll go in the same order, starting with Jay Craig, People's Party of Canada. If elected, how will you specifically ensure the voice of the Moose Jaw area business community reaches Parliament Hill and key decision makers? Mr. Craig.
When elected to Parliament, I will stand for us. I will be your loud and boisterous voice that we have not had in Ottawa ever. Our lack of representation and someone willing to stand for us has been apparent over the last decades. And I will stand for you. I will fight for you. I will be your guy. I will be your MP in Ottawa.
Again, the question, if elected, how will you specifically ensure the voice of the Moose Jaw area business community reaches Parliament Hill and key decision makers? Caitlin Zimmer, Liberal Party of Canada candidate.
I am the daughter of a small business owner, and I am the employee of a small business myself. And so I have a vested interest in this issue. I guess I'm sort of the anti-Che in this respect, because I am not that loud or boisterous, and I am not so into fighting. What I am is a collaborator. So I'm the type of person that can get along with people, that can work with all types of people, and that is selfless enough to represent the people of Moose Jaw, Lake Centre-Lanigan. I have no personal interest in running in this election. Other than that, I really care deeply. And so I think that this openness, this unbiasedness, and this genuine want to serve is what would make me the best representative in order to take the message to Ottawa.
The question again, if elected, how will you specifically ensure the voice of the Moose Jaw area business community reaches Parliament Hill and key decision makers? NDP candidate Talon Regent.
The Moose Jaw area voice has not been heard in Parliament for decades, and that is because we have had a Conservative representing our riding for decades. The Conservatives are not interested in Saskatchewan. They take your vote for granted, and they will prioritize Ontario and Quebec because those are the areas where they're trying to win. So if we keep voting for a Conservative, we are never going to have our voice heard. They will never invest in Saskatchewan because they think they have this area in the bag. By voting for a New Democrat, you ensure that your vote isn't taken for granted and that this riding itself is not taken for granted. Business owners in this riding will be able to rely on me as a fellow business owner, as a fellow member of the Chamber of Commerce. They will be able to rely on me knowing that I am representing our best interest. I am representing innovators in our community. It's also a matter of the parties themselves. The Liberals and the Conservatives, they are not interested in working together. They are not interested in minority governments. It's a majority or it's nothing. Justin Trudeau called an election during a pandemic because he wanted a majority government, because he couldn't get along with the Conservatives, and because the NDP was fighting for you, and the Liberals wanted to make decisions in the best interest of billion-dollar companies and the ultra-wealthy. New Democrats, we thrive in a minority government. We thrive by working together with whichever party is in power. And even if the New Democrats themselves were in power, we would still work together with everybody, because that's what it means to have a democracy, and we believe in that democracy.
The question on the table, if elected, how would you specifically ensure the voice of the Moose Jaw and area business community reaches Parliament Hill and key decision makers? Conservative candidate Fraser Tony.
Well, thank you very much for this question, and I will say this, I have, instead of starting off the campaign door knocking, I've been combine hauling. I've been going out to farmers and farmers' fields and meeting with farmers, and I think that's what it takes. It's getting out to know your community and getting to get to know the people and the challenges that they face. And I would build on experience that we have already experienced here in the city of Moose Jaw. When I was first elected in 2016, we had a strategic plan for the City Hall that no one understood. And I felt that that wasn't working. And so what we did was we built partnerships, and we included the Chamber of Commerce, downtown business, local investors, tourism, and City Hall. And we came up with a community strategic plan. And then we came up with rebranding our community, which has attracted millions of dollars worth of investment through tourism. And so I would build on that success to be able to go out to our riding, listen to different chambers of commerce throughout the riding in different smaller communities, and to be able to hear what they have to say and see if we could create partnerships, and then take that information that they've shared with us and take it to Ottawa. And I'd also like to point out that the Conservative Party is making commitments to this riding already by committing to partnering with the province of Saskatchewan and the Upper Capel Water Conveyance Project of $4 billion to help farmers. And we've also received funding for the local airport. So I would continue to work on that and be able to represent this riding and their needs.
And again, if elected, how would you specifically ensure the voice of the Moose Jaw area business community reaches Parliament Hill and key decision makers? From the Maverick Party, Craig Townsend.
The mechanics of the system ensure that whatever party wants to form government has to abandon their Western constituents. The Maverick Party is only running candidates in Western ridings. As such, I will never be forced to bow to the will of a leader in Ottawa. I can represent the interests of the constituents in this riding. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And thanks to everybody who has tuned in to the Moose Jaw District Chamber of Commerce Political Forum, featuring the candidates of Moose Jaw Lake Centre-Lanigan. The next question for our 5 candidates, there are 6 candidates, 5 are here with us here tonight. Recovery from this pandemic will take years, and businesses have taken on significant pandemic-related debt, including many of the subsidy programs being considered taxable income. If elected, how would we propose to address this issue to help small businesses get back on track and address pandemic-related debt? Jay Craig, People's Party of Canada.
We need to get the economy back on track. Absolutely, we need to learn to live with this virus, and we need to develop a plan to get our economy going again. And that includes helping get our small business owners and our large business owners back to work, getting Canadians off of CERB and just getting them back to work. That's the biggest part of this is that we've crushed our economy through a response to COVID. And yes, there's a virus, but we need to learn to deal with it, and we need to get Canadians working again.
Again, the question, recovery from this pandemic will take years, and businesses have taken on significant pandemic-related debt, including many of the subsidy programs being considered taxable income. If elected, how would you propose to address this issue to help small businesses get back on track and address pandemic-related debt? Liberal Party of Canada candidate Caitlin Zimmer.
So I think the first step in getting back on track is making sure that employees can return to work safely, and businesses can once again open their doors to the public. And what that's going to take is vaccination. The vaccine is the best tool that we have to fight this virus. And so we need to ensure that anybody who can and is eligible to be vaccinated gets vaccinated. And we need to do that not only to protect vulnerable people in our society, like immunocompromised people and children, but we need to do that for the economy. The other thing that we need to do is get everybody back to work. And that includes women who have had to face the decision to stay home, to abandon their careers due to the high cost or unavailability of childcare. So focusing on a $10 a day childcare program is going to be another way to get all contributing members back to work and stimulate the economy. And finally, we need to be forward thinking. We can't be working ourselves out of a job. We need to be innovative, and we need to focus on jobs that are going to be around in the long run. And these are clean jobs, they are green jobs, and that is what's going to put us at the forefront in the global economy.
The quest for recovery from this pandemic will take years, and businesses have taken on significant pandemic-related debt, including many of the subsidy programs being considered taxable income. If elected, how would you propose to address this issue to help small businesses get back on track and address pandemic-related debt? NDP candidate, Talon Region.
We're talking about the pandemic recovery, but let's not forget that we are still very much in the midst of the pandemic itself. Saskatchewan is seeing the largest number of daily cases that we have ever seen, and this includes during the lockdowns. So if we want to make sure that we are recovering from the pandemic, we have to beat the pandemic, and that includes vaccines. And it pains me that my Conservative candidate is not interested in putting forward the message that you need to get vaccinated if you can get vaccinated. You need to protect your community, you need to protect your family, you need to protect your coworkers. So, when we can get past this pandemic, when we can beat this pandemic, what else are we going to do? And I am proud that the new Democratic plan has been fully costed by the Parliamentary Budget Officer, and it has been deemed a better plan for getting rid of our deficit than the Liberals and the Conservatives. It is a plan that ensures that we aren't trying to spend our way out of the pandemic. It is a plan that's going to increase our revenues. It is a plan that's going to ensure that ultra-wealthy Canadians are paying their fair share towards the recovery. It means investing. I mentioned education. Every dollar we invest in education, we see a net $7 return. Making smart decisions with our money is what it's going to take. And the new Democratic plan has been applauded by economists across the nation for being the best plan. So I'm very excited for that. It is a plan that includes creating 1 million jobs. It is a plan that includes growing our energy economy. It's a plan that includes getting everybody back to work, making sure that we have affordable childcare so that women and parents of all kinds can get back to work. New Democrats have the best plan, and that's been proven by the experts.
Again, the question, recovery from this pandemic will take years, and businesses have taken on significant pandemic-related debt, including many of the subsidy programs being considered taxable income. If elected, how would you propose to address this issue to help small businesses get back on track and address pandemic-related debt? Conservative candidate Fraser Tolney.
Well, we want to restore confidence. And the Conservative Party got us out of the last recession and will get us out of this recession. We want to rebuild Main Streets. And we have a program that launching the Rebuild Main Street tax credit. This will provide a 25% tax credit on amounts of up to $100,000 that Canadians personally invest in small businesses over the next 2 years. This will give a strong incentive for Canadians to invest their money to help entrepreneurs rebuild our country. Launching the Main Street Business Loan is another option of up to $200,000. The $60,000 that is already being offered is not enough. The Liberals and the NDP and Greens do not have a plan to get Canadians back to work. Even before the pandemic, they gave us the worst economy since the Great Depression. I'll say this again, the Conservatives got us out of the last recession. They'll get us out of the next one.
And one more response to this question from Maverick Party candidate Craig Townsend. How will the Maverick Party help small businesses get back on track and address pandemic-related debt, sir?
Western Canadians are intelligent, industrious people who have thrived in spite of Ottawa. The Maverick Party believes in scrapping the carbon tax, scrapping equalization, and having the federal government get out of industry's way, get out of small businesses' way, and let us continue what we're best at. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up, a question submitted from one of our viewers here tonight. It is well known that the election is decided before the West polls even close. What is your stance on the current first-past-the-post electoral system? If you see it as an issue, what would you do to rectify it? Jane Craig, People's Party of Canada candidate.
There are currently many systems used around the world. The first past the post, I don't know how we reform that. I don't know what the correct answer is. I do know that there is no vote split. That's one of the biggest marketing or best marketing campaigns that the Conservatives have ever put forward. Here in this riding, the Conservative, the current incumbent, won with 71% of the vote. The second place NDP took 17% of the vote. Therefore, a Conservative voice, you can split that more than 3 ways and not allow room for the NDP or the Liberals, Greens, whatever have you to slide in. Pick someone who you want to represent you. Pick who you want to be your voice. Vote for me, Jay Craik in Moose Jaw Lake, Centre-Lanigan, People's Party of Canada.
Again, the question, it's well known that the election is decided before the West polls even close. What's your stance on the current first-past-the-post electoral system? If you see it as an issue, what would you do to rectify it? Liberal candidate Caitlin Zimmer.
I can understand the frustration in that, and also how that might add to the feelings of the West being forgotten. And I would also comment that anytime you're looking at overhauling a big system like how we elect our government, it's going to take time and money, and so that's going to be a huge investment. I think I would agree that we shouldn't let that dictate our vote. We shouldn't feel like we don't have a voice or that our vote doesn't matter, that just because this riding has been Conservative, it will always be held by the Conservatives. And so I think in this election, it's more important than ever to vote for the representative that you want for you in Ottawa and not worry about voting for strategical reasons.
Again, the question for those who may be just joining us, it's well known that the election is decided before the West polls even close. What's your stance on the current first-past-the-post electoral system? If you see it as an issue, what would you do to rectify it? NDP candidate Talon Regent.
The first-past-the-post system is wrong, and it needs to be overhauled. And yes, it'll take some hard work to do it, but it is necessary. It is necessary for our democracy that we get rid of this first-past-the-post system. Justin Trudeau campaigned on that in 2015. He was quoted as saying this was going to be the last election under a first-past-the-post system. And here we are, on 2 elections later, and it's still first-past-the-post. And Justin Trudeau has abandoned that as an issue. He has decided and realized that the Liberals and the Conservatives are the ones that benefit most from the first-past-the-post system. They like their majority governments, and so they will never change it. Neither the Liberals, who have just flat out said it, nor the Conservatives, because the Conservatives also benefit. The New Democratic Party is the credible party that's going to get rid of this. And we are going to replace it with a mixed member proportional representation system. And I don't want to get into what that means in the nitty gritty, but what that means is that we will see more representation in Saskatchewan. We will have a stronger voice, and every vote will count. You don't have to vote strategically for the guy in blue or the guy in red because they're pitching almost the exact same platform. You can vote with your heart. You can vote however you want to. A new democratic government will empower you to have faith in that sort of system. Whereas the Liberals and Conservatives, they don't want to change because they benefit from this. It's like my Conservative candidate talking about overhauling accountability. But it's his government that's had control of that for decades, and they didn't do anything about it because they benefited it. We need somebody new, somebody that's fighting for you, the New Democratic Party.
Again, the question, it's well known that elections are decided before the West polls even close. What's your stance on the current first past the post electoral system? If you see it as an issue, what would you do to rectify it? Conservative candidate Fraser Tone.
Well, there's two parts to this question that I would address, and I would agree that Mr. Trudeau did campaign on electoral reform and has not delivered on that promise. But I will also point out that in 2019, Andrew Scheer, leader of the Conservative Party, had won the popular vote. And so right now, it's the electoral system that we have, and unfortunately, no one's been able to deliver on the promises that were given in 2015.
And one more response to this question. Well known that the elections are decided before the West polls even close. What's your stance on the current first past the post electoral system? And if you see it as an issue, what would you do to rectify it? Maverick Party candidate Craig Townsend.
Well, the Maverick Party believes in democratic and constitutional reform. Our party supports a fair and balanced representation of federal civil service and federal offices in Western Canada. And we advocate for the decentralization of the federal civil service and offices to Western Canada to better serve the unique interests of Canadians in the four Western provinces. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I believe we have time for one more question before we get into our closing statements. And each candidate will have 3 minutes, correct, for their closing statements. Here's the question, and it's simple. What is your party policy on gun control? Jay Craig, People's Party of Canada.
That's fantastic. I'm a gun guy, so our party policy is cancel Bill C-71. We need to focus on criminals in Canada. We need to strengthen our current laws. We need to back our police forces. We need to absolutely get off this gun control debate. It's not about the guns. It's not about the most vetted, tested, and trained individuals in Canada. There are currently over 2 million gun owners in Canada. They are not the problem. The government is the problem. The criminals are the problem. We need to fix this.
Caitlin Zimmer, Liberal candidate. What is your party policy on gun control?
Are you sure you didn't plan these questions?
Worked out good.
So, as a veterinarian, I am trained to use firearms. We received our possession acquisition license as part of our large animal training. I also married into a family who hunts, which was really hard for me to come to terms with, considering I come from a long line of people who save animals. But thanks to Steve Ranella of Meat Eater, who provided the best marital counseling we could have ever received, I have come to understand hunting. And what I do know through my work as a veterinarian and through learning about hunting is we do not need assault-style weapons to lead life in Saskatchewan. We do not need high-capacity magazines that can fire off rounds of ammunition in an automatic fashion. And so that is what the Liberal government is proposing, is to ban assault-style weapons and high-capacity magazines.
Again, the simple question for our candidates, what is your party policy on gun control? NDP candidate Talon Regent.
I'm not sure if this is the first time that Moose Jaw Lake Centre-Lanigan has had a slate of candidates that are all experienced with firearms. I was a provincial silver medalist pistol shooter, and I've got my RPAL. I have my license to have long guns and handguns, and the NDP is the party that's looking to take the most measured, targeted approach. We're the ones that are looking at the science and speaking to the experts and listening to what they have to say. And what the experts are telling us is that illegal firearms are largely coming across the American border. And so the first thing we need to do is ensure that the Canadian Border Security Agency has the appropriate level of funding and the appropriate resources to stop those guns from coming across the border. From there, we want to make sure that we take a regional approach, because Moose Jaw Lake Centre-Lanigan, we don't have a particularly violent region. We don't have a ton of gun crime going on as compared to larger centers like Toronto. We've seen shootings in places like Montreal. We see issues in Vancouver. And the NDP is looking to empower municipalities, cities, to take the approach that's necessary for them. The New Democrats would say, Moose Jaw, you guys are doing great. You've got tons of gun owners. All of your candidates seem to be gun owners. And you aren't seeing gun crime. So you do you. Whereas Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, if you're having issues, then you can take a more restrictive approach. So by taking this measured approach, by cutting off the guns at the border and ensuring that we have regional control, that is the type of intelligent, targeted answer that is necessary to address gun control without being overly restrictive.
Conservative candidate Fraser Tony, what is your party policy on gun control?
Thank you. The Liberals are demonizing law-abiding firearm owners, while at the same time introducing new measures to reduce sentencing for criminals charged with illegal gun offenses. This is confusing and hypocritical. I want to read from the Coalition for Firearms Rights a message that was sent out. In our view, Mr. O'Toole is reacting to Justin Trudeau's attempt to make an unnecessary election during a pandemic about gun control. Gun control has always been a political wedge issue to the Liberals, not a matter of public safety. We agree with Mr. O'Toole that the classification of firearms should not be a political process. Mr. Trudeau has used this issue to divide Canadians, and a transparent public consultation would bring a better understanding of this topic to all Canadians. We would welcome an opportunity to depoliticize this topic and focus on public safety. The Conservative Party wants to support you and the safety of our communities.
And one more response to that simple question: what is your party policy on gun control? Maverick Party candidate Craig Townsend.
The Maverick Party is strongly opposed to the latest firearms confiscation program. We support the appointment of a chief firearms officer headquartered in Western Canada. We advocate for a long overdue independent process to examine all current and future firearms legislation to ensure regulation is correctly targeted at the reduction of gun crime and not unnecessary, ineffective, and overly bureaucratic restrictions on law-abiding firearms owners. We also recommend that all Western provinces seek greater autonomy and oversight with respect to gun laws. Thank you.
Thank you all for your responses, and we'd like to thank all of our viewers tonight for their questions. Of course, we can't get to them all, but certainly you've had a great opportunity to learn about our candidates in Moose Jaw Lake Centre-Lanigan here tonight and what they and their parties stand for. Again, thanks for joining us on Facebook Live, on the Moose Jaw Chamber of Commerce Facebook page, and on the YouTube channel, and on discovermoosejaw.com. We have now reached the point where we'll have our closing comments. Each candidate will have 3 minutes maximum for their final wrap up. And again, we'll go back to the start. We'll start with Jay Craig from the People's Party of Canada.
Thank you. Never did I see myself in this position. Never did I aspire to be a politician. And never did I see Canada being in the mess it is in now. So here we are. I'm here before you, asking you to stand with me. Don't be duped by the best marketing strategy ever of split the vote. Western Canadians fell for it last time, and we weren't happy with the outcome. Don't make the same mistake again. Why would you cast your vote for another party or candidate if they don't represent you and don't most closely align with your own values and beliefs? Why would you suppress your own voice by voting for someone who doesn't stand for you? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. If you want a different outcome, you have to be willing to do something different. We are the only party with no vaccine passport, the only national party to cancel the 2020 Order in Council gun ban. No new gun control. Yes to crime control. No new spending. We need to get our own house in order before we spend more money. Yes to pipelines. Reform equalization formula. Smaller government. Stop foreign spending. Defund the CBC and fire Theresa Tam. Thank you.
Closing comments, maximum 3 minutes from Caitlin Zimmer, Liberal Party of Canada candidate.
When I decided to enter the political arena, somebody said to me, why would you want to do that? Because it's not like you're going to win. And that to me was exactly the reason why I wanted to do this. I wanted to give people a choice. I wanted to bring other closeted liberals like me out of the woodwork who perhaps felt like their vote didn't matter or didn't count. I have spoken to a number of friends who claim to be conservative, and the more I talked to them, the more apparent it became that they were very socially liberal. And these are the interactions that I love. I love to learn about people by talking to them. I have a genuine curiosity in getting to know people. I am continually surprising myself and others with my ability to put one foot in front of the other, to sit in front of cameras and audiences and do something that I didn't believe that I was capable of. And I also play very well with others, as evidenced by the diverse group within my family, within my friends, and within my coworkers at the clinic that I work at. My job as a veterinarian is to listen to my client. It's to examine my patient, and it's to communicate effectively, taking everybody's personal situations into account. So in this role as your MP, I will listen, I will collaborate, and I will always advocate for Saskatchewan, the province that I love. So I ask you to do your part, to do your research, to evaluate all of us candidates under our own merit, and of course, to vote on September 20th.
Closing comments, 3 minutes maximum, Talent Regent, NDP candidate.
We've had a lot of conversations tonight about things like gun control, businesses, and at the end of the day, every single decision that we make needs to be in the interest of people. It needs to be in the interest of our community. And New Democrats are ready for better than what the Liberals and Conservatives are prepared to deliver. We are ready to deliver for people, and that's why I'm fighting for you. And so every decision that I make that might help small businesses, every decision that I make that's going to affect security, that's going to affect the criminal code, it is in the interest of people. It's in the interest of things like universal farm care, mental, dental, and optical care. These are the things that families need so that they have the opportunity to succeed. And in order to fund these types of things, we can't just throw money at it the way that the Liberals and the Conservatives want to. We need to ensure that the ultra-wealthy are paying their fair share towards the pandemic recovery. We need to close tax loopholes that allow them to send their money offshore. We need to ensure that we are getting out of this pandemic together. And by ensuring that we have adequate resources, that is how we're going to do it. We're going to do it together. So when we talk about ensuring that small businesses have enough funding, when we talk about making sure that farmers can recover from their droughts, which I absolutely support and which the NDP has committed to doing, it is in the interest of farmers as people. It is in the interest of making sure that they can continue to thrive in a growing agriculture community so that we can put food on the table and so that food doesn't become so expensive that people have to choose between food and medication and a roof over their head. If you're working a 40-hour work week, you should have a livable wage. You should be able to afford these types of things. And we need to invest to ensure that these things are affordable. We need to invest in post-secondary education so that everybody can go and get the education that they need, so that they can get the skills necessary for the employers in the job market. We need to ensure that we invest in building 1 million new homes, retrofitting old homes so that they are more insulated, bringing down the cost of heating and air conditioning. We can invest in ensuring that you can go to the pharmacy and pay with your health card instead of your credit card. It is through these targeted and intelligent investments for the people of Canada that life is going to become more affordable, that we're going to have more skilled workers, that everybody is going to be able to succeed regardless of the background that they come from. That will allow Canada to become a global leader, and that is the dream that I have as your Member of Parliament. So vote Talon Regent. Thank you.
Closing comments, again, 3 minutes maximum. Conservative candidate Fraser Tony.
Again, thank you to the Chamber of Commerce, and thank you, Rob, for hosting tonight. I also want to thank the other candidates for being here tonight and putting their names forward in this election. Tonight, you've heard some very different visions for Canada's future. This election has come at an extremely inconvenient time for all of us. Farmers here at Moose Jaw Lake Centre-Lanigan are in the middle of a stressful harvest season. Parents are sending their children back to school during the 4th wave of COVID-19. Canadians have left allies behind in Afghanistan. When you go to cast your ballot on Monday, I want you to remember that Justin Trudeau, as Prime Minister, was facing all of these issues and more. He decided to call this election. Canada needs a government that puts the needs of our country ahead of their political ambitions. We need a recovery plan that will utilize all sectors of our economy in all regions to get our country back on track. Agriculture and natural resources have always been the heart of Canada's prosperity. We need a plan that will empower our world-leading agriculture and energy industries instead of holding them back with endless taxes and regulations. Together, we can rebuild our economy. All Canadians need to be part of our economic recovery plan, whether you're working in oil and gas or information technology. The Conservative Party understands that an Ottawa knows best approach simply doesn't work for ridings like ours. I have a direct experience in government and an intimate knowledge of the challenges we face as a region. I have served the City of Moose Jaw as a City Councillor and Mayor. I've served with numerous non-profit organizations and charities. I've served our country as an officer in the Royal Canadian Air Force. And I'm ready to serve you in Ottawa. I will say this again. I am driven by service, committed to accountability, and I'm asking for your support in this important election. Please get out and vote this Monday. And when you do, I'm asking for your support to secure Canada's future. Vote Conservative. Vote Fraser Tolney. Thank you, and God bless Canada.
And closing comments from Maverick Party candidate Craig Townsend.
Thank you. One thing I'd like people to take away from this is to put your confidence in real-world observations. There are a number of divisive issues being thrust upon the public these last few decades that don't match real-world observations. Canada has among the highest environmental and ethical standards in the world. The world will use fossil fuels for the foreseeable future. If climate change is global, why would we shut down oil production that we control in a country with rule of law and enforcement of environmental standards, only to import from countries who have much lower or no such standards? Vaccine passports are not vital to citizens. Antibodies to the virus and a healthy immune system are. One way to get antibodies is to introduce a vaccine, and in a recommended 14 days, you have the antibodies. The other is to get the virus and get over it, and you have the antibodies. Antibody tests are available in the US. We should have the freedom to decide whether a vaccine or any medical intervention is right for you and your family, without political intervention or the risk of polarizing communities and pitting people against each other. This is not the Canada I grew up in. Since 2015, violent crime has gone steadily up. The only dip was during the pandemic. Suicides have gone up, bankruptcies have gone up. Meanwhile, Canada has slipped from 6th place to 14th in the World Happiness Report, a publication of the United Nations. Every country has problems, and the pandemic. These trends are the results of Ottawa's policies. The Liberals not only wish to continue these policies, they want a majority to push the agenda without interference. For the last 2 years, the NDP has supported these policies, and now Mr. O'Toole has joined in pushing similar policies and stated that any MPs who do not follow these policies will be ousted from the party. This is not the direction Canada should be going, and led to the creation of the Maverick Party. The Maverick Party is the only party that offers true Western representation. Our MPs will support legislation that benefits the West. We advocate for constitutional change, and we would like to see Canada's laws and constitution applied equally and fairly across Canada. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of our candidates tonight. If we had a live audience here tonight, I think we'd ask for a round of applause for all of our candidates here tonight. It was a most informative and intense 2 hours, most respectful, most professional, and you all be congratulated for your courage and your passion for not only the Moose Jaw Lake Centre-Lanigan riding, but for our country of Canada. Jade Craig from the People's Party of Canada, Caitlin Zimmer, the Liberal Party of Canada candidate, Talon Regent from the NDP, Conservative candidate Fraser Toney, and Maverick Party candidate Craig Townsend. Thank you so much for your efforts here tonight, and good luck to all of you on Monday in the 2021 federal election, and thanks to you for tuning in tonight.